Please rotate your phone to portrait.
Welcome to PYQs, and this is a vertical that deals with answer writing. We have already completed all the geography questions of 2015, and now we are taking up 2014 GS paper. And the demand of the question is concentrated around El Nino. So you would start your answer with its definition, that what is El Nino, and you don't need to mention a very high ending definition. You just mention that it is the abnormal warming of central equatorial Pacific. And eastern equatorial Pacific. And what it does is, when this happens, it disturbs the global atmospheric circulation, which influences weather worldwide. So you would start your answer by just citing the very simple definition. If you could do so using these flowcharts, that is also good. But you should start your answer with definition, 3-4 line definition. And the impact will be really good if you could mention this with map. So this is equatorial, 0 degree. So when the temperature in the eastern part rises and the middle part rises, that is the case of El Nino. You could also show the impact of El Nino through a flowchart as well. Like, this is just for your understanding. Abnormal Pacific warming leads to weak trade winds, because this is the region that has trade winds as well. So they also get weak trade winds. That leads to shift in Walker's up. And then with this, you see disturbance in jet streams, and that leads to unusual climatic happenings. So this is the demand of our question. What are those? Like floods, like drought, like wildfires, bushfires, etc. So that is your introduction. Then you would go on mentioning straight away the unusual climatic happenings. And El Nino has a cascading effect. And how is it? I'll show you that with development of El Nino, you see monsoon winds weakens in India. That leads to reduction in rainfall. That leads to water supply disturbance. That leads to very negative impact on crop production, which disturbs our food security. With food security disturbing, you see huge impact on economy. So this is the cascading effect of El Nino. These are all pointers, no? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then you would also mention that El Nino leads to severe heat waves with change in temperature it is also lead to global temperature rise. That is also a reason for severe heat waves. And you could validate this point with saying that most recorded hot years coincide with El Nino phase. Then you would mention coral bleaching. With rise in temperature, coral all over the world starts dying. So that is a very huge environmental cost that is there as far due to El Nino effect. Then you have erratic nature. Like in normal cases, the South America region, the South America region experiences normal level of rainfall. This region experiences dryness. This experiences rain in normal cases, but during El Nino, you see reversal of this. You see rainfall in desert areas, in deserts, and flood in South America, and wildfires in Australia. You must have seen those very disturbing clips on YouTube where you have seen the animals getting burned. So that is the case due to El Nino. Then you would mention collapse of fisheries, because upwelling weakens. Upwelling of nutrients weakens. You also see redistribution of tropical cyclones with shift of cyclone frequency between ocean basins. So these are the reasons, unusual climate happenings that are there due to El Nino. But the question has said that most of the unusual climate happenings. So do you agree with that? So you would mention that, however, I do not fully agree. Because not all the climate happenings are due to El Nino. Because there are certain other factors as well. Several other factors. What are those? The very first is climate change. Rising greenhouse gases emissions intensify extreme weather patterns. You see a phenomena of Indian Ocean dipole. And when the positive Indian Ocean dipole is there, it compensates for weak monsoon. Due to El Nino. So this is a blessing for India. Then you would mention a phenomena called MJO, Madden-Julian oscillation. That controls active break cycles of monsoon and cyclone formations. This is also a reason for unusual climatic happenings rather than just being El Nino. Then also you could mention there is Arctic amplification as well. That alters jet streams, which leads to persistent heat waves. And cold waves. So this is also one such reason. Then you would mention something called Atlantic multi-decadal oscillation. That is AMO. What it does, it influences Atlantic hurricanes, and rainfall. So this is also a reason for unusual climate happenings. And the last but not the least is local anthropogenic factors. What are those? For example, urban heat islands, this is our creation. Deforestation, aerosol formation, that is pollution, land use changes, you see wetland destruction. So all these reasons as well are leading to unusual climate happenings. So you would not say that El Nino is the only reason for the unusual climate happenings. So you have to balance your answer with these points as well. Now, towards the end of the answer, you would mention that compound climatic extremes leading to modern climate disasters are taking place from the interaction of El Nino as well as several other factors as well as anthropogenic warming. So these are the reasons by which you see very unusual climates. Hence, a multi-factor approach is essential for accurate prediction and resilient climatic governance. So that is how you could answer your question on a very positive note. Thank you. Today's question, that is GA, is asking about fold mountains. So initially you have to mention a brief definition what are fold mountains, and fold mountains are nothing but young mountain chains formed by compressional tectonic forces at convergent plate boundaries. You have to highlight this because this is very important. Okay. These are two belts, and when they converge, it leads to mountain formation. And with this, you also need to mention certain examples of fold mountains, and the very best way to show that is through a map. Like this, we would make a very simple map. And you would mention the very first is Himalayas. Then you have Ural Mountains. Then you have Andes Mountain. Then you have here Rockies Mountain. Here you have Zagros Mountain. So all these are examples of young fold mountains. Now the demand of the question is almost all the young fold mountains are along the continental margins, and the reasons for that is, now we would mention the reasons. In such a question, you would find that most of the regions are leading to convergence boundaries, convergence compressional forces. So you have to make multiple points. You cannot just mention 2 points. You have to mention 7-8 points in order to validate the strength of your answer. So very first reason you would mention is convergent plate boundaries, as we have already outlined in the very first definition. Convergent plate boundaries. When plates converge, leads to mountain formations, and when the continents, they have over a period of time have converged, and they have lead to, like India has come from here to here and collided with the Eurasian plate, which leads to Himalayan formation. Then you would mention geosynclinal sediment accumulation. The continental margins, what happens is, like if this is a continent, the margins of the continents are accumulated with sediments and thick marine sediments, and over a period of time later undergo folding. There are hundreds of marine fossil fuels on the Himalayas because they were around an ocean in the beginning, and when they collided with the Eurasian plate, that the sediments of the oceans, they all starts coming and building into a towering peak. Then you would mention subduction process. When two plates converge, the lesser, denser plate subducts and the other plates go up, leading to mountains and very other climatic events like volcanoes and earthquakes. And this compression uplifts the crust, leading to into mountains. Then you would mention continental collision. That creates enormous compressional forces. You could mention Himalayas as an example. Then you would mention crustal shortening. What does this mean? This means that horizontal compression convert into vertical uplift. That is there. Then you would mention magmatic intrusions. What does this mean? It means that when the lava rises, the magma coincide with convergent plate boundaries. And the very good example for this is Mount Kilimanjaro. Then you would mention a very important point is fold mountains are part of Wilson cycle. What is this? Where oceans open and close over a very long period of time, and culminating into continental collision, leading to mountain building. Then you could also mention active tectonic margins. And very clearly and easily you would say that nearly all fold mountains coincide with convergent plate boundaries. So that is how you could mention the reasons why all the young fold mountains are along the continental margins. Now they have asked us to associate certain geophysical phenomena. Association. And what are those phenomena? The question is asking. Fold mountains, earthquakes, and volcanoes. We have to make the association. So very first point you would mention is all these originate due to plate interactions. Then you would mention that earthquakes along fold belts. Earthquakes takes place along fold mountains. Why? Because compression accumulates a lot of stress, and when this stress is release of this leads to sudden earthquakes. Then you would mention that Benioff seismic zone. when you see one plate going underneath the other, this zone is called Benioff. And this is also very important focus for earthquake as well. You see volcanoes here, and along these mountains here, you see all these earthquake seismic activities as well. Then you would mention circum-Pacific belt, consisting of Andes Mountain, Rockies Mountain, Cascades, Japanese Alps. They all have high seismicity and volcanism. This is also a reason for Pacific ring faults. Then you would mention Alpine Himalayan belt. This also has frequent earthquakes, but very limited volcanoes. And the reason is, very first, where is this Alpine Himalayan belt? Like, this is India. This is Alpine Himalayan belt. This is also, you see, a very important region in Italy as well, which is very prone to earthquakes and volcanoes. But Himalayan belt has very high seismic activities, but very limited volcanoes. And the reason is continental collision lacks active subduction. I will show you a very good flow chart. You can use it for understanding. When two plates converge, you see certain phenomena taking place. First is compression. Compression will take place. Subduction will also come into picture. You will also see faulting as well. So when compression is taking place, you will see the formation of fold mountains. With subduction, you will see active volcanoes. With faulting, you will see high seismic activities. So you could bring out the association between these three through this flowchart as well. And towards the end of the answer, you would mention that global coincidence of fold mountains, volcanoes, earthquakes validates the theory of plate tectonics and understanding these dynamic interactions is essential for risk reduction, sustainable mountain building, and resilient infrastructure. So that is how you could answer your question. Thank you. And today's question is asking about formation of archipelagos in and around Indonesia and Philippines. Why there are so many islands in this region? So initially, you would provide the introduction like Indonesia and Philippines together comprise nearly 25,000 islands, and this makes them the world's largest tropical archipelagos. So this can be the introduction where you would mention what is being asked in the question. Then you could also relate this with that their origin is a classic example of interaction between plate tectonics volcanism, and marine geomorphology. So after mentioning this, a slightly brief introduction, you should always mention a diagram. So this is Indonesia and this is Philippines, and also demarcate this region because this region is a ring of fire, a region which is very seismically active, and the most volcanic activities takes place in this region. And after mentioning this in your picture, I would provide you a flow chart to make your understanding more deeper. Like when plate converges, what happens when plate converges? Ocean plate subducts because of lower density. Like if this is the ocean plate, this subducts, and with subduction, melting in the mantle takes place. With this, magma rises, and with rise of magma, you see volcanic island arc formation. So this is a flowchart for make your understanding deeper, and then you will start your answer with citing the reasons for it. Very first reason you would mention is both countries are located at convergent plate boundaries. You see Pacific belt, and then you see Indo-Australian belt. So this convergence, they are located at this location. Then you would mention subduction of ocean plate is reason for such a phenomena, archipelago formations. Activity takes place here, and then faulting takes place, and you see magma formation, and with this you see volcanic arc formation as well. And when this takes place successively, when successive the volcanic eruption takes place, it leads to volcanic island formation. Then you would mention that both the countries are lie along ring of fire. This region is very active, volcanically very active, and all the seismic activities and volcanisms takes place. This is also one such reason for such phenomena. Then you would mention both represent active stages of Wilson cycle, where oceanic lithosphere is consumed through subduction, as a result creating volcanic islands. In all these questions, you will most certainly find that there are certain points which are overlapping, just with change of words. But you have to overwhelm the person who is checking your answer. For that, you mention a lot of points. At least 10 to 15 points you will mention to make a worthy answer. Then you would mention orogeny is the region, that is mountain building. And how this is taking place? Compression between two plates causing uplift of submarine mountain ranges. The ranges that are lying underwater with mountain building, the compression uplifts them and they come to the surface, making archipelagos. Then you would mention presence of deep oceanic trenches. They mark active plate boundaries. When a plate subducts and one rises, these are trenches, and this shows active plate boundary is taking place in the region. Then you would mention earthquake induced upliftment of seabed. As I said, the Ring of Fire region is very seismically active, and due to that you see upliftment of seabed as well, and new land emerges gradually. Then you would also mention that crustal fragmentation is taking place into smaller blocks, and these blocks are occupied by sea water. Sea water occupies lower blocks, creating island chains. Then you would also mention that coral reef development is also one more reason. You could mention they expand island area. Then you will mention the ongoing geological evolution is another reason for sea level changes and creation of archipelagos. And at last but not the least, you will mention differential erosion and sediment deposition, also one of the reasons for the formation of deltaic and coastal islands. So you will mention all these points to validate your answer. And as a value addition, it's not asked in the question, but as a value addition, you could mention connection with India. Like India has a Sagar policy, security and growth for all in the region. This strengthens cooperation with ASEAN countries, including both Philippines and Indonesia. Then there is one more platform, IPOI, that is Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative. This is also for cooperation, for disaster management. So you could also mention these initiatives and connect the answer with India. And towards the end of the question, you will mention that Indonesia and Philippines archipelagos are living laboratories of plate tectonics, where subduction takes place, volcanism is happening, upliftment is seen, coral growth is visible, and all these things continue to reshape Earth's surface. So this explains your answer. And you could mention another point to give your conclusion a very worthy edge. Like, while these processes create immense biodiversity and strategic maritime spaces, they are also, at the same time, they are also exposed to recurring geohazards. This is a very value addition point. Hence, therefore, it underscores the importance of international cooperation, scientific monitoring and resilient disaster management in the wake of aggressive climate change and global warming. So you could mention these pointers in your conclusion to make it worthy and provide your answer an edge over others. Thank you. About tropical cyclone. So initially you will start with its definition that it is not merely a storm. Rather, it is the atmosphere's most efficient heat engine that converts warm ocean energy into destructive kinetic energy. So after mentioning this, you will relate the introduction with the question as well. That is very important. So for that, you will make a diagram. This is Gulf of Mexico. Then you have Africa. That is India. The question has mentioned three regions: Bay of Bengal, South China Sea, and the Gulf of Mexico. And why tropical cyclones are more prominent in these regions? That you will mention that although tropical cyclones form all over the tropical oceans, but these three regions provide consistent, favorable conditions. So because of these favorable conditions, these regions have high intensity of tropical cyclones. So what are these favorable conditions? Let's understand this as well before citing the reasons for it. So we could understand this with a Venn diagram. Like 30% weightage can be given to sea surface temperature, 20% weightage can be given to ocean heat content, then 15% can be attributed to humidity, low wind shear, and then 10% each for Coriolis force and IT, CZ, and other disturbances. These are the favorable conditions due to which a tropical cyclone develops in ocean bodies, in water bodies. And these favorable conditions are more prominent in these three regions. According to data, nearly 30% of global tropical cyclones takes place in Western North Pacific. So that is how prominent these regions are. Let's move ahead. And now we will mention the reasons. The very first reason you will mention is these regions have very high sea surface temperature, over 26 degrees Celsius. And this helps in enormous release of latent heat. Then you would mention these regions have high ocean heat content. These terms are very important, especially this one. Ocean heat content. It means that warm water extends deeper depths, which enable rapid intensification. So this also provide favorable condition for tropical cyclone. Then you would mention abundant atmospheric moisture. And due to this, which sustains strong convection and cloud development. If this is warm ocean and the temperature is over here, so these create low pressure zones here, and convection takes place. And with these convective currents, you see with moisture in the air and humidity, you see cloud formation. And with the effect of Coriolis force, you see cyclone formation. So that is how a tropical cyclone develops. After this, you would mention presence of Coriolis force that initiates cyclonic rotation. Then you would mention ITCZ zone, intertropical convergent zone. When contrasting trade winds converges, this creates a region of ITCZ. And the disturbance in this region leads to generation of low pressure systems, which eventually develops into cyclones. Then you would mention monsoon trough and seasonal low pressure, which provides pre-existing disturbances. After this, you would mention that large semi-enclosed warm water bodies. These are very large and semi-enclosed water bodies. And this helps from intermixing. Intermixing of water does not take place, which helps in retain its heat efficiently and helps in rise in sea surface temperature. Then you would mention high evaporation rate in these regions. Then you would mention geographic funnel effect, which enhances storm surges and cyclone impact. After this, you could also mention minimal cold currents. These regions allow sustained warm water. So if you see the map, you will soon realize that this is a region for north equatorial warm ocean current. Then if the region around India, you will see again warm ocean current. And in the South China Sea, you also see north equatorial warm current. So there is lack of cold currents in the region, which helps in sustaining warm water, which is a favorable condition for. So these are the regions of cold currents. Then you would mention these bodies are large oceanic stretch. These bodies are very large, so this helps in formation of cyclonic growth. Cyclonic growth takes place before landfall. Then at the end, you could also mention that intensification due to climate change and global warming is also one such reason for these phenomena. Intensification due to climate change. So after mentioning the reasons why these tropical cyclones are taking place in these regions, you should also mention why these tropical cyclones are less common in other areas as well, in other water bodies. And the best way to explain this is through a diagram. This is North Atlantic. It's in Mediterranean as well. So this is a little less frequent in this region. Why? Because of cool sea surface temperature. It is less common near equator because of weak Coriolis force. It is less frequent in this region because of cold cold ocean current. So like this, you could mention that due to these reasons, these tropical cyclones are not taking place in these water bodies. So after this, you should mention certain current events like Remal cyclone or Dana cyclone in 2020 took place due to all these favorable conditions arising in Bay of Bengal. Then you have certain initiatives by India. What are those? Let's see. India continue to strengthen early warning dissemination system. India also focuses on National Cyclone Risk Mitigation Program. So these are certain initiatives which India has undertaken. So you could mention, and towards the end of your answer, you need to mention a very relevant conclusion, and you could cite that these tropical cyclones are surely product of convergence of favorable conditions, and as the problem of climate change looms, and with climate change you see increase in sea surface temperatures, ocean heat content rising, marine heat waves. These are the repercussions of climate change. The challenge is no longer limited to cyclone prediction. Earlier we used to predict cyclone only, but now with increasing of this challenge, the challenge from cyclone prediction has moved to enhance resilience through accurate forecasting, disaster preparedness, and ecosystem-based adaptation. And in the end, you could mention a vision. We need to embody the vision of zero casualty and minimum damage. So that is how you could end your answer on a very relevant conclusion. Thank you. Today's question is asking about shrinking Himalayas and symptoms of climate change. You could give your answer a very important introduction, like Himalayas are called third pole as well. This shows the importance of Himalayas. And Himalayas and their glaciers act as natural climate thermometers. How? When glaciers shrink, when glaciers melts or shrinks, Himalayas simultaneously indicate and accelerate climate change across Indian subcontinent. So you could sum up these pointers in your introduction for a very relevant starting. And let me provide you a very important flowchart. With global warming, you see temperature rise in Himalayas. And with temperature rising, you see melting of glaciers. Glaciers are melting. And with melting of glaciers, you see a lot of things. That is river flow change, disruptions. You see glacial lake outburst, floods, GLOFs. You see reduced albedo. We will explain these things during our reasons. So all these things are what? These are symptoms of climate change. This was for your deeper understanding. Now you could also mention there are certain factors for glacier melting as well. You could mention those factors like around 50% is attributed to temperature rise. Then you could mention black carbon deposition. Then you could mention black carbon deposition, reduced rainfall, reduced snowfall, land use pattern change. So all these factors are leading to melting. And this is a symptom of climate change as well. So now let's move forward to the main body, that is, we will establish the relationship now between these two things. The very first reason we will mention is with rapid glacier retreat. This is direct indicator of global warming. This reason establishes the relationship. Then you would mention melting creates unstable glacial lakes and often leading to glacial lake outburst floods in Himalayan regions, GLOFs. They are increasing. Then you would mention changing river hydrology is one more reason that establishes the relationship between the assertions. Like with melting, initially you would see increase in river discharge. But on a longer run, you will see that rivers experience reduced summer. So this is one more reason. Then you would mention monsoon variability is visible, which is the outcome of reduced snow cover. This, when snow cover reduces, it alters land atmospheric temperature gradients, which results in erratic monsoon rainfall. So this monsoon variability also establishes the relationship between shrinking Himalayas and climate change. Then you would mention increase in extreme events such as heat waves, cloudburst, flash floods. You see landslides. All these events are continuously on rise in Himalayan region. After this, you would mention threat to food and water security. With shrinking Himalayas and climate change, threat to food and water security is very much visible, because you can cite this: nearly 600 million people of India depend on Himalayan rivers for a variety of reasons, for agriculture, for food, water, drinking water. So this is also reason. Then you would mention reduced surface albedo. You know, the snow over the surface act as the reflector. When the rays from the sun rises and strikes the surface, snow reflects them back and maintains the heat. But with climate change and ice loss, the darker surfaces are exposed, which absorb more heat and further warming takes place. So this is also one reason to establish the relationship. Then you would mention black carbon deposition as well. Black carbon deposition. soot from industries, biomass burning, settles over ice glaciers and accelerates melting. Then you would also mention loss of biodiversity. With rising temperature and glaciers melting, this is a threat to the snow leopard habitat, alpine meadows. Then you would also mention increase in forest fire, which is very much visible in states like Himachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand. Because with melting and reduced snowfall and less snow, you see longer dry seasons. And we see instances of forest fires as well. Then you could also mention hydropower vulnerabilities, with changing river flows and sediment load. This directly affects dam safety and electricity and power generation. This is also one reason. Then you could also mention socio-economic impacts, like livelihood loss, like migration will increase, or decline of tourism. So this is also a reason. Then you would mention cryosphere monsoon feedback, because towards the end of your points you should mention certain relevant and important points to catch the eye of the examiner. Like, what is this? When glaciers retreat, glacier retreats changes atmospheric circulation, which influences monsoon dynamics. This is also one reason. Then you would mention climate tipping points. Two days back, during the Bonn summit in Germany, India emphasizes on tipping points because continuous glaciers retreat triggers irreversible changes. And for this, you could also cite a report by ICMOD that says that even at 1.5 degree Celsius warming, 1/3 of glaciers volume would be lost. So these are the pointers which you could mention to establish the relationship. Now let's see certain initiatives by India. Like India push for life, which is lifestyle for environment. Then you could also mention increasing automatic weather stations in Himalayan region. And towards the end of your answer, you would mention a very relevant conclusion, like the retreat of Himalayan glaciers is both a warning signal as well as amplifier of climate change. Therefore, protection of Himalayan glaciers through emission reduction, climate resilient mountain development, disaster preparedness, and trans-boundary cooperation. So protection of Himalayan glaciers is essential for ensuring long-term food, water, and ecological security of Indian subcontinent. So that is how you could answer the entire question by providing a relevant conclusion and introduction in the beginning, and then pointers for the establishment of a relationship. Thank you. So you could start your answer with citing the importance of tea and how that region was more favorable compared to other regions. Like you could mention that tea is not merely a plantation crop, but a product of precise interaction of what? Precise interaction of climate. Climate should be favorable for its growth. Then the factors required for its growth are altitude. Then you would mention drainage. Then you would mention soil, topography, etc. All these factors help in the growth of tea. And then you would connect your introduction with what is being asked in the question. While Britishers attempted to establish tea across the Himalayan foothills, like Shivaliks, Lesser Himalayas, Darjeeling alone offered a unique geographical combination necessary for commercial success. So that is how you will relate the demand of the question with a very fresh introduction. So you could include these pointers in your introduction, and then let me tell you certain data. Like India now is the second largest producer of tea, and Darjeeling tea enjoys a GI tag status and global recognition and reputation. Then you would straight mention the reasons why Britishers could not succeed beyond Darjeeling. So the very first reason you would mention is it has the ideal altitude, because tea production requires altitude of 600 to 2000 meter of elevation, and the region of Darjeeling, the hills of Darjeeling, provide the ideal condition as far as altitude is concerned, and this helps in providing slow leaf growth and superior flavor. Then you would mention the unique need of rainfall, unique orographic rainfall. The region of Darjeeling receives around 200 and 300 centimeters of well distributed rainfall, not the seasonal, throughout the year, and this provide continuous moisture support. To the tea plantation. Then you would mention the persistent fog and cloud cover in the region of Darjeeling, which helps in reduction of transpiration, which protects tender leaves from tender tea leaves from sunlight. This is again a favorable condition in the region which is found in variability in other regions. Then you would mention cool temperature region, cool temperature of Darjeeling. This is also very favorable because tea requires around 18 to 25 degrees of Celsius only. You would mention a very important point that the region of Darjeeling has well drained acidic soil. Drained acidic soil because requirement of tea is pH 4.5 to 5.5, and the region of Darjeeling has very deep humus rich mountain soil which helps in the growth of tea plantation. Then you would mention that the region of Darjeeling has steep slopes. And what do? They ensure natural drainage. Because tea cannot sustain waterlogging conditions. Therefore, the steep slopes of Darjeeling favors a natural drainage system that helps in growth of tea. Then you would mention a very, very important point, that is terroir advantage. These points are something that provides you edge over other students. Like what is terroir advantage? This is distinct microclimate. It simply means that the region possesses a unique interaction of altitude, humidity, sunlight, wind, soil, and this unique interaction of all these factors provide a premium quality of tea which is impossible to replicate in other elsewhere. So this literally answers the demand of the question. So this is a very important point you should mention. After that, you should also mention other points like the very important point, which is as far as industries are concerned, is accessibility. And during colonial period, the other regions, other Himalayan regions were literally inaccessible, and hence the region of Bengal was very much developed as far as transportation was concerned during that time, and which increased the accessibility, and hence this region was favored for tea plantation. Then we could also mention availability of labor, and this was ensured by continuous migration from Nepal, northeastern region, and this ensured a stable workforce in the Darjeeling region. Then you could also mention Darjeeling developed other major industries for the success of tea plantation, such as processing factories, export system, plantation fields, while other regions lack this wholesome approach. Then you could mention this region does not has frequent frost. Darjeeling lacks such conditions which helps in tea production, which was prevalent in other Himalayan regions. So that is also a reason you could mention. Then you could also mention topographic constraints in many of the other Himalayan regions. So all these reasons provide a favorable condition why Darjeeling was favored by the Britishers for tea plantation. So after mentioning the reasons, let us mention what India is currently doing as far as tea plantation is concerned. That we have a tea board of India that promotes tea plantation. We have a GI protection system that the government provide GI protection or status to product to protect against other counterfeit products. We also have one district, one product initiative that promotes tea in the region. And we have a very important point, that is MOVCTNER. What is this? Let me tell you. This is Mission Organic Value Chain Development in Northeastern region. So this is very important. This provides you a clear edge over other students. So you should mention this. And towards the end of your answer, we should mention that success of Darjeeling tea demonstrates that agricultural geography is governed not by the presence of a single favorable factor. Because we see a lot of conditions for its growth. So success of Darjeeling tea does not depend on just one single favorable factor, rather by the synergy of climate, relief, soil, biodiversity, human interventions. So synergy of all these things help in the success of climate change. And you could connect the question with climate change as well, like as climate change threatens Himalayan microclimate, conserving the unique terroir which we discussed before. We need to conserve the unique terroir of Darjeeling through sustainable plantation practices. And this is very crucial for preserving India's globally renowned tea heritage. So starting with explaining why the region was favored by the British during colonial times and then stating the reasons for the same, you could end your answer on a conclusion on a very positive note like this using these pointers. Thank you. As far as this question is concerned, we could make a map for more clarity. When MS Swaminathan proposed Green Revolution for India, it was proposed to take place throughout India for food security. But this region specifically took the maximum benefit of Green Revolution, while this region, the eastern part, left behind. So that is the demand of the question which we need to cater to. So let's move ahead. The introduction we could mention is, the introduction that we could provide is that there exists a paradox of eastern region. And what is this paradox? Because eastern region has abundant natural resources like rain, like rivers, like fertile soil. But all these favorable conditions could not translate into green revolution in the region. So you will mention that Green Revolution transformed India's food security through HYV seeds, irrigation, MSP, fertilizers, etc. But its benefit remain concentrated to Punjab, Haryana, Western UP. So you could mention this in your introduction, and let me provide you certain data. Like Eastern India nearly has 60% of India's groundwater resources. Then in India, nearly 85% of farmers are small and marginal. And to validate the assertion of question, you could also cite that 75 to 80% success of Green Revolution came from this region, the northwestern India. After mentioning these pointers in your introduction, we will move straight to the reasons. Reasons why Eastern region lagged behind in Green Revolution. The very first reason is the Eastern region is prone to flood prone ecology, which damages HYV crops. So this is the very first reason you could mention. Then the region has excess rainfall, which causes poor drainage, and as a result, productivity is reduced significantly. Then you could mention lack of assured irrigation. These irrigation facilities, such as tube wells, canal infrastructure, could not develop in Eastern region. As a result, it could not succeed. Then you could mention a very important point, that is fragmented land holdings. Since we mentioned that nearly 85% of Indian farmers are small and marginalized, the land that they hold are fragmented and small. This prevents mechanization. The small farmers could not include or incorporate technology into their fields, or this prevents economics of scale as well. You must have seen those videos that farmers of Australia or America, they use helicopters to disinfect their fields. So that's how technologically developed they are as far as agriculture is concerned. So this is lacking in India, especially in the Eastern region. Then you could mention poor rural infrastructure in Eastern region. Rural infrastructure development, roads, storage, electricity, market connectivity, roads, storage, connectivity. This discourage commercialization. Then you could also mention low institutional credit availability. The farmers in Eastern region depended on money lenders instead of formal banking. Formal banking was missing in the region. The penetration of formal banking was lagging behind in Eastern region. As a result, farmers did not have enough funds to make it a success. Then limited fertilizer and input use. Then you could mention there was no mechanism for procurement in Eastern region. Absence of procurement ecosystem. Like you see huge agricultural mandis in the states of Haryana, Punjab, Delhi, but these procurement ecosystem was missing in Eastern region. Then you see policy bias as well, because government prioritized regions with assured irrigation to quickly achieve food security. When this green revolution was organized in India, India was going through a very hard time as far as food security is concerned. Famines, disastrous floods, they were recurring at that time. Therefore, government prioritized those regions where food security can be achieved as fast as possible. So you also see a policy bias as well. Then you could mention limited reach of agricultural universities as well, which prevented or delayed technological adoption in the eastern region. You see lower private investment, and all these regions were going so against the eastern region. You also see lower private investment as well. Then you could also mention socio-economic backwardness as the reason for the failure of green revolution in eastern region. Poverty was prevalent, huge illiteracy, migration made sure that people are not available for their own fields. This reduced farmers' capacity to adopt modern ways of agriculture. So you could mention all these reasons to validate your answer, and we also can mention using this diagram, we can also mention why eastern region bypassed green revolution. Like there are physical factors. What are physical factors? Like floods, as we discussed earlier, recurring floods, waterlogging conditions, cyclones. These regions hampered the growth of green revolution in the eastern region. Then you have institutional factors as well, like MSP was not available for them, like weak irrigation infrastructure, like poor credit facility. Then you could also mention socio-economic factors such as small and marginal farmers, poverty, low mechanization. So all these reasons ensured that eastern region could not enjoy the fruits of green revolution. After this, we will mention what India is doing to change this. That we have PM Kusum, which provides solar pumps to farmers. We have PM Krishi Sinchai Yojana, in which we have a campaign called Har Khet Ko Pani. Then we have a very, very important point you should mention, that is BGREI. The definition of this is bringing green revolution to eastern India. So this is the focus of our government now. Then we also have climate resilient agriculture, that is making eastern India the next frontier of India's second green revolution. So after mentioning these initiatives, towards the end of the answer, we would mention the future lies in evergreen revolution. This term was used by the most famous person, that is MS Swaminathan. So you quote him to end your answer. And what is evergreen revolution? When you combine productivity, profitability, or sustainability. So this is evergreen revolution. So mention Eastern India possess immense agricultural potential. Immense agricultural potential. Hence, we need to strengthen irrigation management in the region, MSP access, climate resilient technology and crops, because the region is prone to disasters. Then develop market infrastructure. So all these things can transform the region into nucleus of India's evergreen revolution, ensuring productivity, profitability, sustainability. So that is how you could end your answer on a very positive note by citing M.S. Swaminathan himself using these pointers. Thank you. Command of the question can be addressed if you could show it through a map initially, like this is in South America, and then these are the old core regions where steel and iron industries prospered. But now the shift has taken towards India, towards China, towards Southeast Asia, towards South Korea, Japan. And we have to cite the reasons for this shift. Let me tell you certain data as well. So more than 50% of steel production is done by China. So this shows a huge shift. And 25% is by others. And a major chunk of 8% by India. And this makes India the second largest crude steel producer. Then you have Japan as well, then you have USA as well. So this is a data you could cite. And also you could mention that steel production contributes nearly 7 to 9% of global CO2 emissions. So that is a very huge impact of steel production on global warming and climate change. So after understanding this data, you could start your answer with a very insightful and connected introduction, like iron and steel industries once concentrated in coal fields of Europe and North America has witnessed a major spatial shift. So that is how you connect what is being asked in the question to the introduction towards the Asia and coastal manufacturing hubs due to a variety of reasons: globalization, technological advances, changing resource economies, and geography of iron and steel industries has shifted from resource oriented location to market, technological, logistics, and decarbonization oriented location. So this is for your deeper understanding. So you could cite these pointers in your introduction. So now let's move forward to the most important part of the body, that is reasons for the shift. Very first reason you would cite is shift has been seen from raw material orientation. Earlier, the industries were set up around the raw material, but now there has been a shift, and now the focus for industry setup is majorly market availability, technological availability, skilled labor. So these are the driving forces for the establishment of iron and steel industries nowadays. Then you would mention rise of coastal steel plants. Earlier you would have seen the iron and steel industries around the coal fields or plants, but now coastal steel plants have evolved, which has made import cheaper. So this is one reason to cite. Then you would mention rapid industrialization. Rapid industrialization and infrastructure development has shifted production to Asia. The developing countries like India, China, Southeast Asia, like Vietnam, Cambodia, they are developing at a very large scale, and the industrialization and infrastructure development needs have shifted the production to Asia as well. So after mentioning this, you would mention technological advancement is taking place in developing countries like China and India. For example, you see electric arc furnaces. They depend on scrap instead of iron ore. Technology like this reduce the dependence on coal, iron and steel. Then you would mention globalization has integrated global supply chains. And due to this integration, location constraints are significantly reduced. After this, you would mention very important point, that is availability of cheap labor in developing countries, which has prompted these big iron and steel industries to these regions. Then you would mention growing domestic market needs as well. Needs, because very large infra push you see in developing countries like India and China, this created new steel clusters. New steel clusters. This is one more reason. Then you would mention improved transportation technologies, like very large ships, bulk carriers. They can transport anything to anywhere by reducing freight costs. Then you would mention government policies. The developing countries like India, they have realized the importance of these industries, and the push is provided by government through their policies like SEZ zones, then industrial corridors, subsidies, And this has encouraged the shift. After that, we would also mention strict pollution norm, like EU has a mechanism called CBAM, Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, and this has shifted polluting industries to developing countries. Then you see transition to green steel. This is a new investment model. For example, Germany is investing hugely in hydrogen-based steel. Sweden has a project called Hybrid, which produces fossil-free steel. So newer technological advancements are also taking place, which has prompted the shift. Then you would mention that scrap-based steel production. Because mature or developed economies are increasingly relying on recycling. Then you mention availability of capital, and FDI, foreign direct investment, has prompted new steel plants in emerging economies as well, by providing the fund. So these are the reasons you could mention. Now let's see what India is doing as far as this question is concerned. We have a proper national steel policy as well that safeguards our national interest and industries. We also have PLI schemes which benefit downstream steel manufacturing. We have National Green Hydrogen Mission for producing green steel. This is a technological transition that we are encouraging in India. We also have PM Gati Shakti as well, which aim to improve the logistics. These are the points that you could mention. And towards the end of your answer, you would mention the spatial pattern of iron and steel industries reflects the transition from source dependence to competitiveness and sustainability. For your deeper understanding, you could also mention that the locational triangle of iron and steel industry has shifted from earlier it was based on coal, iron, ore and water, but now this shift is more towards market, technology and sustainability. So this is the shift that we are talking about. And then you could end your answer by writing with green hydrogen, circular economy and decarbonization policies, future steel hubs will increasingly emerge where clean energy, technology, efficient logistics, they all converge rather than merely where raw materials are found. So that is how you would connect the terms that were mentioned in the question and provide a very insightful conclusion as well. Thank you. Before I tell you the introduction, let me tell you how much ocean are important as far as the resource crisis of the world is concerned. This is Pacific Ocean. This is Indian Ocean. This is Southern Ocean. This is Atlantic. And above you see Arctic Ocean as well. So these are the main water bodies. And you also see Red Sea here, Persian Gulf here, Mediterranean Sea here, Bay of Bengal, Arabian Sea, these smaller bodies and seas. So how this can be utilized to help the world in order to tackle the resource crisis. I'll tell you certain data as well. Oceans cover 71% of Earth's surface, and oceans possess 97% of Earth's water, and around 80% of global trade worth trillions of rupees is transported by sea. And oceans also absorbs nearly 25 to 30% of anthropogenic CO2 emissions as well. So oceans are very important if we want to tackle the resource crisis of the world. So after mentioning this, you need a very good introduction. You could mention that covering over 71% of Earth's surface, oceans constitute the world's largest natural resource reservoir. So this line is very important, resource reservoir. So the concept of blue economy seeks to harness resources sustainably to address global resource crisis. So you mentioned what is being asked in the question in your introduction. That makes your introduction very relevant. And after this, you would mention the importance of oceans and its resources. So let's see one by one. For fisheries and marine food needs, because oceans supply around 17% of global animal protein. This can address the problem of food security. Ocean can be harnessed for mariculture, which is marine aquaculture. Oceans can be used for cultivation of seaweed, which has tremendous potential, which is a source of food, which can be used in pharmaceutical industries, which can be used as biofertilizer. Plus, seaweed also absorbs atmospheric CO2 as well. So we could cultivate seaweed in oceans. Then we have offshore oil and natural gas reserves. We could harness these resources. And these are important transitional energy sources. Then you could mention offshore wind energy as well. We could harness this as well. We also have tidal energy as well as wave energy. Using this, we could produce electricity. Then you could mention very important point, ocean thermal energy conversion, OTEC. And what is this? This utilizes temperature difference between warm surface water and cold deep water. Hence, its usage in Indian Ocean can be utilized. Then you could mention deep sea minerals with polymetallic nodules, which are reserves of nickel, cobalt, copper, magnesium. This could address the problem of mineral crunch which is being faced by the world. Then you could mention marine sand and aggregates, which are used in construction and coastal development, coastal infra development. Then you could mention desalination as well. You could convert saline water into fresh water. So these projects can be taken up, and these are vital for water scarce countries. Then you could mention ocean-based tourism as well, which generates a lot of employment and promotes coastal development. After this, you could also mention marine biotechnology. How marine organisms produce certain enzymes, antibiotics, and can be used for making anti-cancer drugs. This is very important for health security. Then you could mention carbon sequestration, because mangroves, marshes, seagrass, they all absorb carbon from the atmosphere. So these are the significance of ocean and its resources which can be used. And there are many more as well. Now we will move forward to the critical evaluation. While we have the resources of the ocean that we explained earlier, we also have to face the challenges. And what are those challenges? We have environmental challenges in the form of overfishing, in the form of coral bleaching, in the form of habitat destruction, in the form of ocean acidification, and also marine pollution. These are the challenges as well. While we extract the resources, we also have technological concerns as well. Technological concerns as well, like the technology is expensive, deep sea mining. We also have high maintenance costs. Then we have governance issue as well, because sovereign countries, they engage in resource conflicts. Then UNCLOS implementation is weak. For example, you see in South China Sea, China has proposed a 9-dash line to claim the entire South China Sea, and they do not consider the international treaty of UNCLOS, and this is a resource conflict. Then we also have economic issues as well. like unequal access between developed countries and developing countries. So these are the challenges you could mention as a part of critical evaluation. Now you will mention what India is doing as far as ocean resources are concerned. We also have a deep ocean mission. We have a Samudrayan mission as well, under which we are making Matsya submersible for underwater exploration. We also have Matsya Sampada Yojana. And you could also mention that India secured exploration rights in Central Indian Ocean Basin for resource extraction. And you could also mention that UN has called the decade from 21 to 2030 as the decade of ocean. This is the ocean decade that we are living in. So after mentioning these certain pointers in your answer, you would conclude your answer. The future resource crisis will be solved not only by exploiting oceans, but by sustainably governing them. So this is a very concise and crisp conclusion as well. You could also mention the oceans are no longer the world's last frontier. They are becoming humanity's next resource frontier. And oceans possess immense potential to alleviate global resource crisis, but their exploitation must remain within ecological limits. So that is how you could use these pointers in your answer and cite a very insightful answer to the question. Thank you. So first, you would mention that Africa is endowed with abundant resources. Like Africa has oil reserves, Africa has critical minerals, Africa has fertile land, a very young workforce. And in the backdrop of this, Africa has emerged as a key economic frontier. Africa has shown its importance and significance with this. And India views Africa as a strategic development partner, which is essential for India's energy security, India's resource diversification, India's trade expansion, and very important and relevant for South-South cooperation. So for all these reasons, Africa is very important as far as economic space is concerned. And you should also mention India's Africa policy is guided by the principle of development partnership. and not just resource extraction. And this distinguishes India from other countries. So that is a very relevant introduction which you can provide to your answer. Now, I'll provide you certain data. Like Africa has nearly 30% of world's mineral reserves. Is how important Africa is. Africa has 40% of world's gold reserves as well. A country like India, which is importing a lot of gold, can surely take advantage with African trade. And a country in Africa, that is Democratic Republic of Congo, it produces 70% of cobalt. It's like monopoly on cobalt. So these are certain data which you could use for your understanding. And you could also mention that bilateral trade between these two countries exceeded 100 billion US dollars, which shows the importance of India and Africa. And India also extends over 12 billion in concessional line of credit for growth and development in the region. After knowing this data, when you have a very clear understanding, you should make a map of Africa. Also make India as well to show the connectivity. Now this is Africa, and you would see that the region of Africa can be utilized for, like, South region is very rich in gold, platinum, lithium reserves. Then the Eastern Africa can be used for blue economy, port connectivity. As far as India is concerned, then you see the Central Africa is very rich in minerals like cobalt, copper, uranium. You see the Western African region as a source of, again, connectivity and port-led development, and the North Africa is very significant for oil, natural gas. So that is how you could indicate the importance of Africa as far as India is concerned. And after mentioning this, now let's sum up this diagram in pointers. Africa is important for energy security because it can diversify India's energy needs. After this, you could mention Africa is very important for its critical mineral reserves, and we could build critical minerals partnership for India's EV and semiconductor ambitions. Then you could also mention Africa is a huge economic body, and it is very significant for trade expansion. We already do trade over 100 billion, and it is still untapped completely. So we could tap that resource in our favor. Then you would mention Africa is a huge investment destination for India for a variety of things like mining, investment in telecom sector, in automobile sector. After this, you could mention that Africa is important for India's food security as well, because we could cooperate in agriculture, irrigation techniques we could share, and provide food processing items as well. After this, we could also mention that we could build a digital partnership as well. And there is a huge scope in digitalization of relationship in this. Like we have digital public infrastructure, which we could build. e-governance. We could work on e-governance, telemedicine, and huge scope and potential in this area. Then India is very important for Africa as well, for capacity building as well. And we should mention that ITEC programs trains 1,000+ African professionals every year. So India could provide that as well to Africa. Then we could build healthcare cooperation for affordable medicines, vaccines, etc. Then you could mention the relationship can also develop for infra-led development. Both the countries can help each other by building so much of infrastructure, and India could provide concessional line of credit as well. So after mentioning these points, you would also mention that India and Africa can cooperate on maritime as well. Maritime cooperation. And together they can do anti-piracy operations. They can cooperate on blue economy. Then you mention both countries can untap the potential of manufacturing partnership, which promotes local value chain rather than raw material extraction. And you could also sum up this point by citing that India seeks to build value chains in Africa, and not merely supply chains from Africa. This sentence will provide you an edge over other students. Then you could also mention on education, both can cooperate, and we have also opened IIT in Zanzibar. We provide scholarships and university collaboration as well to Africa. Then there's a huge scope of collaboration on renewable energy projects like solar parks, clean energy project. And we also have an example for this, like we have International Solar Alliance, which promotes all this. Then we could also mention the South-South cooperation. With shared developmental experiences, both countries can help each other without any conditions. And at the end, you could also mention both can help each other on global governance as well. Like during a G20 summit in New Delhi, India advocated for inclusion of African Union in G20. And India supported this. Like this, both region can develop global governance as well. After mentioning this, you would mention the challenges. And what are those challenges? Variety of aspects, like economically, India faces a strong competition from China, USA, Europe. So that is one challenge. Then you could mention politically, instability in the region. Instability, and you also see recurring coups. Then security is also a question. because you see a lot of civil wars in Africa. The Sahel region of Africa is fraught with extremism. Piracy in the water is very common. Then you mention weak infrastructure. Weak infrastructure in Africa increases project cost. Then you mention governance is also a reason, because when you see delays in program implementation, you see the region suffer. So these are the challenges you could mention. And now let me compare, because India has a comparative advantage over China. How? Let's see. India focuses on developmental partnership versus resource extraction by China, which is the sole focus of China. India pursues capacity building, while China growth model is infra-led only. They do not focus on building capacity. We could provide affordable technology and its transfer, while you must have seen China provides large loans. India focuses on human-centric approach, while China, you see, debt concerns. You must have seen debt trap policy. India follows democratic values and respect their distinct culture. In case of China, it is state-led investment mainly. So this is a comparative advantage that India enjoys over China. Now you see what India is doing. India has a forum called India-Africa Forum Summit. India also has a Sagar policy that strengthens the goal of blue economy, security and growth for all in the region. Then India also has a critical mineral mission that sees Africa in its economic space. India also has a national green hydrogen mission. Mentioning what India is doing, towards the conclusion, you would mention that Africa is not merely India's resource partner. Rather, it is India's partner in shaping the future of global South. So you could also mention this crisp and concise conclusion, or let me provide you one alternative as well. You could also mention that India's engagement with resource-rich Africa extends beyond securing raw materials to fostering what? Inclusive growth, tech transfer, sustainable development, and by combining economic cooperation with capacity building and South-South cooperation, India aims to build a resilient, mutually beneficial partnership that contributes to Africa's development and India's long-term strategic and economic interest. So this conclusion is very relevant as far as question is concerned. However, this conclusion was very crisp and concise. So you could choose either of the two for your answer. Thank you.